Today we're going to be cooking with pumpkins. I love pumpkins. I love this time of year. I grew up in the States, so this time of the year is really festive. A lot of farmers in the States supplement their income by planting a very large pumpkin patch and creating a really family-friendly day out in the autumn based around pumpkins. I remember going and getting on the tractor and riding out into the field and stumbling around in wellies, picking my own pumpkin, and then getting back on the tractor and riding it back into the farm. And usually when you got there was some form of farm shop. There was even hay rides and corn mazes and a cafe, and it was just a really, really fun experience. And before I moved back here to Scotland, I used to take my children when they were young to a local pumpkin farm, and it was just really great. There was a petting zoo, there was peg races, there was apple cider donuts. It was just a really fantastic thing for them to go. And it was once a year because the pumpkins are only ready at this time of year. So here in Scotland, the pumpkins are a bit of a mystery. People really don't know what to do with them except to carve them into a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween and then throw them away. So pumpkins are a really versatile squash. They are a member of the squash family. They can be really, really thick and meaty, or they can be slightly fibrous. It just depends on the variety of pumpkin you get. So all pumpkins can be cooked. Any kind of recipe that you would use butternut squash in, you can use a pumpkin in. So this is one of those vegetables that you can use and create a sweet dish or a savory dish. And today we're going to be creating a pumpkin curry. Now we're going to be using we're going to be using the butternut squash soup that we made last week. I froze some of it, which I've defrosted. We're going to use that as a base for our pumpkin curry. So let's head over to the other side of the kitchen and we'll start cooking our pumpkin curry. So the first thing we need to do is we need to carve the pumpkin up into small enough bits that we can skin it and chop it up. I tend to cut the pumpkin apart into bits. I don't slice it directly down the middle. It's just a little bit too difficult to handle. Once you get the bits small enough that you can handle them, you can scrape the seeds and the fibers out on the inside, and I would suggest cutting it up into much smaller pieces to get the skin off. We're going to put some courgettes in here as well, so just rough chop the courgettes and don't worry about de-seeding them. We want them fairly big, the pieces, so they don't disintegrate into the curry. And we're also going to do the same thing to an onion. I would probably quarter this and then cut those quarters into about 3 pieces. Don't worry if they're not uniform in size. We want a bit of texture in this curry. We want a bit of bite. So I would suggest leaving the segments of the onion together instead of splitting them off into individual pieces when you put them into the roasting pan. This just gives them a little bit more texture and a little bit more solidity to them. The onions are going to be roasted with the pumpkin, the courgettes, and some butternut squash in the oven for approximately 20 minutes. I would put them in at about 200 to 220 degrees. We want a bit of color on the sides, but we don't want to lose the firmness of the vegetable. So no more than 20 minutes. You don't want them soggy. So for the curry, because I'm making this vegan, I'm going to be using coconut oil as my fat, and dice another onion fairly small. We want to bring it up to a medium, we want to heat it on a high heat and then lower the temperature down to a medium heat when you add the spices. The spices are divided up into 2. We've got our dried spices and then we have our leaves. We don't want to add our leaves until the very end, so here are the spices you'll need. Once the onions have become clear and you can smell the spices, I'm going to add 1 carton of plain passata. And then, as mentioned in the beginning, we're going to add an equal amount of the butternut squash soup that we made last week. You can find the recipe for that over on the Discover Cooking website at discovercooking.co.uk over in the blog section. We're going to let this come up to the simmer, and once the vegetables come out of the oven is when we're going to add the dried leaves, the coriander and the curry, and we're going to just whack those into the pot. We don't want to stir it too much because we do want to keep some of the texture. We don't want everything to mush up. Add your lime juice and put a lid on it. Lower the heat right down. We really just want to bring everything up to the right temperature so it's all the same temperature. I would not simmer this for any more than 5-7 minutes. You don't need to. And then your curry is good to go. Right, so that's our curry. And if you wanted to, you could add lamb or chicken into the curry. I would add that into the process before you start simmering the sauce. The vegetables really should be the last thing that you add to it, because if you simmer them for any period longer than 5 or 10 minutes, they will break down and they'll just turn into mush and it won't be nice. And you can freeze this, but reheating it again, the vegetables are going to deteriorate a little bit. So if you want to freeze this, I would roast your vegetables off, freeze them separately, and then freeze the sauce. Then when you defrost them and you reheat them, all you have to do is just get them together, bring them up to temperature, and they'll be good to go. This, like I said, you can adapt and put meat in it if you want to, but this is a vegan recipe. I absolutely love this one. I'm not a big fan of really hot and spicy curries, so this one has a tiny bit of heat on it. It's absolutely fantastic for me. So I'm going to go sit down and have this for my lunch. I hope you enjoyed the recipe. I will post these recipes up on the blog in the Discover Cooking webpage, which is discovercooking.co.uk in the blog section. I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe and keep in touch so we can show you more videos. See you later. Bye.